TV. We have one more panelist that's going to be joining us because she went to the bathroom. I wanted to just give a heads up, one, that Thomas Golubi unfortunately had to cancel, as well as Nikki Phillips. Thomas had a conflict and Nikki was sick this morning when she woke up, so I really apologize that they couldn't join us, but we're adding an additional panelist named Natalie Bonin, who will join us, I guess, once she's back in the bathroom. I'd like to poll the audience before we start. Oh, here she is next. Who in the audience is a composer or an aspiring composer? Okay, great. And who is like a songwriter or somebody generally working in music? Fantastic. Okay, great. And I imagine everybody else is just fans of music in general. Woo! All right, we've got some people filing in on the back. Just to get us started, I want to just do a round of applause to welcome our panelists, starting with Dave Porter. Next to him, we have Kyle Dixon, Michael Stein, Eskmo, and our new panelist, Natalie Bonin. To get us started off, I want to kind of poll the audience in a way to see when you know, I'm going to play some music, and when you know what it is, I want you just to yell it out. So I'm going to just play, and let me know when you know what it is. Right, yeah. Two notes in, they know. All right, I'll do one more. How about this one? Yes. Awesome. So you guys definitely know what we're going to be talking about, which is music for TV. Let me turn this down a little bit. We are thrilled to be here and to talk to you guys about how music is a part of television. What I want to start off with and ask the panel, because the title of our panel is called The Character of Music. So this is a general question to the panel, is how does music play a character in your projects?
Well, I can start.
Go for it.
In the latest project that I did, it was actually hypnotist. I was putting people under hypnosis and making them live stories that they were believing that they were living, and they were really hypnotizing. It was a lot of different settings, and so the music was very important because it had to really portray the context, the character that they were supposed to be. Like they were thinking of themselves as a cat or as a Superman or living a scenario in a bar. And there were barely any dialogues in it, so it was very important. And that was a very nice challenge for me to actually have to support the stories with the music like that.
So for 13 Reasons Why, the majority of it obviously is based around cassette tapes, and it was kind of a cool opportunity on the music side because each of the tapes correlated to a character, and so it kind of gave us free reign to make strong themes for each tape and for each character, which is kind of a cool.
No, I'm waving to Jeff Drankin coming because there's a seat over here if you want.
And yeah, basically it was just a cool opportunity to dive into themes for each tape, and it played a huge role in the whole thing. It kind of was a nice long arc throughout the whole entire season. So that's what I have to say about that.
I guess in Stranger Things, the idea was just to have the story, support the story, and it kind of became a character of its own. The viewer's point of view.
It's okay, Dave.
I think this, even as you're going to ask that question, is emblematic of what's changed in TV. I think part of what's been exciting for us as composers working in this golden era of TV, or this era where we have so much good dramatic television, is that music can be used as a storytelling device, as opposed to more often music being used as a crutch in production to help with aspects of making TV that weren't as strong as they might have been if you were making a film. So where 10, to write a lot of music that was going to cover up some snarky dialogue, or some poor acting, or the fact that the VFX weren't quite what they were. We don't have those limitations in television anymore, and it's freed us up in a great way creatively to lend our talents. I think where music is best suited, really, which is to be part of that storytelling process and evolve in the same way, hopefully, that our characters are on these shows.
Dave, I'm going to stick with you and ask you a question. So obviously you composed the score for one of the most recognized shows, Breaking Bad, and its follow-up prequel, Better Call Saul. So what can you tell us about how the shows differ musically and the direction you were given?
Well, when we met up to come back after Breaking Bad had ended to start Better Call Saul, the showrunners, Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, were really adamant that this was going to be a completely new show. And we all kind of nodded and said, sure. But in fact, it felt all the same. It was all the same group of people in the same room talking about a lot of the same characters. And so I think that while it registered in part, I didn't actually believe them. I thought we were going to do some tweak on what we had done for Breaking Bad, because not for nothing, it was kind of successful. So the thought of changing it up seemed strange. But lo and behold, they were really serious. And when I came at them, sort of a Saul-inspired version of my Breaking Bad score, they said, no, this isn't where we're going. You got to really wrap your head around a whole new space for this. And it was hard. It was really hard. Actually, it was more challenging than it would have been starting in a new show in some ways, because we had all of this history already. But in the end, I'm so glad that we made those choices, because it freed us up to really make the show its own.
Cool. Eskmo, real name Brendan Antic, by the way. I feel it's so strange calling you Eskmo, knowing that I call you Brendan normally. But in 13 Reasons Why, each character has their own story and their own episode, so to speak, and they all get their own themes. So how did you approach writing different themes for all the different characters on the show?
I mainly started with Clay and Hannah. That was when I'd seen the pilot. That's when I started to sketch out the Hannah theme, and started to sketch out the general sense of the tapes. It honestly was a super organic process. It wasn't too methodical, thinking too far down the road. It kind of allowed us to, as each episode came about, it was genuinely, without being cliche, it was just kind of taking the characters in and kind of getting a sense of what they needed. And then Hannah's theme, I was able to kind of take her general motif and gently kind of put that into other characters' themes in certain ways, in kind of subtle ways. But certain characters, felt, I did not let go of the characters. And I wanted to use some kind of raw, kind of chugging, darker stuff for them. And some, really empathized in terms of the sweeter, melancholic sides. So it may sound cliche, but it was genuinely just trying to respond to what I was seeing in the story.
Awesome. Kyle and Michael, your main title, which was just nominated for an Emmy, by the way, congratulations. The main title is incredibly iconic, and there are YouTube videos of cellos, guitars, harp guitars, violin, and even an 8-bit MIDI version of your main title. So how does it feel to have your music inspire so many musicians to cover your work? It feels good.
To say the least, I don't think either of us expected the reaction to be what it was, although we definitely were seeking to make a very memorable main title. And I guess we did that. Yeah, it's really good. Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of videos.
Heard a lot of
There's a metal one where this guy does he has drums and everything. It's pretty good. There's an accordion one, I think. Banjo. Pretty much anything you can think of. You can put before Stranger Things.
A little louder. Oh,
So if you want to hear the Stranger Things theme played on any particular instrument, you just put that into YouTube and you will find it.
Any other reactions to kind of seeing all these people cover it other than no? Well, and I also, speaking about main titles in general, which is what I played at the beginning of the panel, they are, you know, the gateway into the show. That's what tells you you're about to get into this world that I'm a big fan of. And of course, Dave's Breaking Bad theme has also been covered immensely, played on meth lab equipment, and was also used in Dancing with the Stars. So it's pretty amazing when these main title themes to your shows like explode into pop culture like that. Eskmo's main title theme that I played earlier is actually a track of yours, right? It is from your recording artist career. Can you talk about how you were, you know, how you still are a recording artist and how that kind of influences your work in film and TV?
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing Eskmo for a while, just touring and albums and all that kind of stuff. And I started working on this show called Billions in 2015 because the showrunner had heard my album on NPR, and they got in touch, and it was kind of perfect timing because I was also stoked to not be touring as much at that time. And so that kind of got my foot in the door to do that type of stuff. And when 13 Reasons Why came around, you know, we were figuring out what the theme song would be, the opening credits and stuff. I actually was more in the mindset that I'd be writing something new for it. It was an opportunity to kind of take the aesthetic from the show and, you know, just make a new thing. And actually the showrunner, Brian Yorkie, was really keen to use Oh, in This World of Dread, Carry On, which is a song that I'd written a few years ago. Which, funny enough, the whole thing about it, and I'm singing in the song, is literally just about, in a world of dread, as things can get so crazy, just kind of continue to go on and live your life, you know. Which was a trip to know that he really wanted to use that for this show, based on what the show was about. So I kind of double checked, and I was like, are you sure you want to use one of my songs? I'm happy to write something new, and he really wanted to, and it ended up being a cool thing. It was really, it was actually genuinely touching for me to see that used in there. And so basically we just took a chunk of the song, and I finessed some elements from the show onto that. We just ended up using it.
Natalie, I want to hear about the music scene for film and TV in Canada, because you're from Canada. And so, do we have any other international people in the audience? Awesome, fantastic. Well, welcome to
Anybody from Montreal?
No. So Natalie's from Montreal, but yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about the whole entertainment industry in Canada and your role in that?
Well, I know more of the industry in Montreal because that's where I work. I know there's another part that's very big also in Toronto, but I haven't had the pleasure of working in Toronto yet. But in Montreal, what I can say is that the scene is very, there's a lot going on, especially in film, and there's a lot of films being shot in Montreal, series, stuff like that, because of location and a lot of tax incentives that are kind of luring people into the city, which is great, but I think we also have the problem of overseas recording more and more. I mean, I'm a track and violinist as well. My first career as a solo violinist, so I played on a lot of sessions for television and soundtracks and movies before, but in the past 7-8 years, I think that's changed, and I think that's a global thing. Aside from that, I mean, there's a lot of talent. I would say the problem, probably the same here, is budget. So there's a lot of proactive efforts to kind of find other tax incentives, more focused on the music, because right now in Montreal it's mainly focused on sound effect, not sound effects, visual effects and animation, which is very big right now. So they're trying to have the full 360 incentives to include the music. So that's a major issue. Yeah.
I wish that the U.S. had a Department of Culture
Really.
with budget to support, you know, independent projects, but
We still don't know if it's going to work, but they're really trying hard.
Kyle and Michael, how do you approach bringing music to the episodes? Do you get to read the scripts first, or do you watch a full cut, scene by scene? How did you approach the show?
The process is a little different this year, this time around, where we kind of just wait for a while, get the cut of an episode so that you don't see too much of like spoilers and things.
So you're creating music for the first season before you saw footage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before they even cast here.
Oh, before the cast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you get involved so early?
Luck, I suppose. We've been making music for a long time, but never in this capacity. And the Duffers found us through our band. Used one of our songs from our album in a trailer that they made to pitch to the networks and everything, and then reached out and asked if we were still a band and if we were making music, and if we would be interested in working on this show they were doing. In the first sentence it said Netflix and we were a writer, so it was pretty easy to say yes to that. And then, in that email they sent over, character descriptions, a couple of scripts, a lookbook, that trailer, and then asked if we could create some more content and basically go through the pitch process. And then we spent about 6 weeks doing that, which was really helpful. And some of the themes that you hear in the show came out of that initial pitch phase. So it was a lot of fun to not have the constraints of the picture in that exploration period. But then having a picture to score to is also very nice because you know when to make things end.
Right.
Exactly what you're making. You know exactly what you're doing. So it was a combination of both, but we started off with description.
Dave, what attracted you to Preacher, and what sort of musical elements are you able to bring that are kind of out of the ordinary for you that kind of makes you excited about working on that show?
Well, I first heard about it early on, having already been working on an AMC show. I knew that they were developing the idea, and I was familiar with the comic from the graphic novel from when I was in college. I wouldn't say I was a rabid fan or anything, but I was familiar with it, and I knew two things. I knew that it was going to be crazy and different, and that if anyone was going to be able to get it on TV, that it would be remarkable. And what I also knew was that Sam Kaplan, who was a writer on Breaking Bad, who I've known for many years, was going to go run the show for Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, and I knew if any group of crazy guys could pull it off, it was those guys. And for me personally, I was very excited about the departure creatively from the other programs I've been working on. Always looking for something that's gonna both be different, because writing for TV, as everybody here can attest, can be a grind. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of deadlines, it's a lot of pressure, and when you have multiple things going on, the last thing you want to do is have two shows that are super similar, because you're gonna burn out creatively. So I was definitely looking for something very different from my Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul universe, and I knew that would be it.
So, can you and Brendan kind of just touch upon, touch upon the topic of scoring multiple shows at once? How do you plan out your day? How do you accomplish all that work? And creatively speaking, obviously, how do you get into the mindset of each different show?
Oh, Brendan's all good.
Okay.
Just in terms of keeping your head on straight with all of it.
Well, just like how do you do it? Like, one creatively, how do you do it? Like, schedule-wise, like how do you plan out your day and get into the different shows?
So this last year was the first time Billions was my first show, and then so this last year was the first time that I had to do two shows at once, and they're both overlapping. So there are two reasons why it was happening at the same time as Billions. And honestly, it's been a learning process. When I started out, because I was very just self-indulged, completely messy organization in all my drives and my own music stuff from previous. So starting to do this stuff, even just logistically, was an experience of just getting things in a way where I could have multiple backup systems. God forbid something happens and you can be able to still keep on writing. That's a huge thing. I think, at least for myself, doing my own artist stuff, I had safety systems, but not really quite. It wasn't completely locked down. And so that was a huge part of it. Also, I started working with an assistant who would help me bounce stems down for the shows, because just bouncing stems down, sending the files to a music editor can just take hours in itself. So while he would be doing that, I'd still be writing stuff. I think a large part of it would be, for myself, I just wake up in the morning and I do my routine, and then I would just start. These days, which is very different than many years ago, I pretty much write all day until 11 or 12 or something like that. On a really long day, I write till 11 o'clock at night or something like that. But I'm not the type of person that would be writing at 2 or 3 a.m. anymore. I was doing that in my yesteryear, but no longer. But a lot of it, honestly, is just staying clean, even if it's cheesy, eating healthy, making sure. I mean, a huge part, honestly, to keep myself from burning out during this last season was getting into nature if I could. Like, really making sure that I wasn't obsessively allowing emails to control me, because that can totally happen when you're doing this stuff, where you're incessantly you're checking in to make sure that someone's not needing something from you. And I think that's a huge thing, to make sure that the digital device in my hand or my computer was just not completely dictating how I was taking care of myself. So to make sure I was eating healthy, getting into nature, and that kind of stuff. Honestly, that was even more important than any of the other kind of logistics stuff. That's it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brendan. It's about organization. It's about being prepared in advance as much as you can, and having really incredibly detailed schedules to make sure you're hitting all these deadlines, which is not the strength of creative people all the time, but it's something we all have to learn working on this. For me, as my career's gotten further along, I've had the benefit of being able to start delegating non-creative tasks, so that hopefully when I get going, what I'm really doing is writing, and I'm spending less time with the stupid emails and less time downloading the latest video or what all those tags, just printing stems, all that kind of Pro Tools intensive, very important parts of the job that we all do ourselves when we're starting. But then when you get busy, those are things that someone else can do for you, hopefully, and you can concentrate on the creative. For me personally, I try, when I have overlapping projects, which happens more and more, and it's a blessing, but it's stressful. I try to devote entire days to a certain project, because I find that if I have to switch back and forth between two very disparate creative headspaces, nothing comes out well. So whenever possible, I try to wake up in the morning and say, today is a better Call Saul day, and work until I can't work anymore, and then if that's required the next day, is something else.
So our topic is obviously music for popular TV, and one of the new ways that we watch TV is on Netflix and streaming services, where the whole season is dumped and people are able to binge like crazy. So I want to ask the panel, when one of your shows debuts and you see that it's become mega popular, what was the experience like? And I want to start with Kyle.
Okay. So yeah, we went to the premiere of Stranger Things on a Monday, and we just finished everything up. And we decided we were gonna take a little vacation because we weren't busy anymore. So I went camping the day that show came out, and I got back on Sunday, and I didn't have cell phone service or anything. And we hadn't told anyone we were working on the show either. We didn't want to jinx it. Just because we were like, I don't know what's going to happen here. We could get fired at the last minute, So none of our friends really knew that we were doing this. This show came out, and I was outside of Portland. For that weekend, I got back on Sunday and turned my phone on, and basically every type of communication that you can receive through a phone, I had several messages from anyone I had ever known. And a lot of people I still don't know. And it was extremely surreal, and we just kind of went straight into the press process after that. some hit and you got messages from people you hadn't heard from a while, or just any reaction to the popularity of the show?
Yeah, I guess for me it was similar kind of feeling. It was a surprise and just felt good. And same kind of thing. I've had a handful of people, like high school connections, Facebook type people that I haven't spoken to in a long time. Which is a cool thing. Nothing extraordinary. Just it felt good. It felt really. It's kind of a trip to see it actually realized. And then but I think one of the most impactful things was having friends of mine that are actually genuinely close to me be impacted by it, which is really cool. Even if it's super subtle, like I saw something which was cool, or if they actually get super into any of the stuff they're doing. I'm the oldest of 9 from a couple different marriages, and my youngest sister is in her mid-teens, and to have her text me about it, just because of the Selena Gomez connection for her, it was actually kind of awesome. That was one of my favorite messages to get, just from her, kind of, looking up to that. It was a good feeling.
Well, Dave, you kind of had an opposite experience because Breaking Bad grew over popularity. So when season 1 came out, not many people knew about the show, but then by the final season, it was like,
Yeah, so I have not done a show for one of the streaming services directly. And I actually have mixed feelings about the whole dropping an entire season at once thing. I mean, I don't know, maybe just because I've worked in other ways before. Certainly when we were making Breaking Bad, we were not designing it to be watched 3 episodes a night. I mean, we were really concentrating on having people have to stew for a week and really think about what was going on. And I think we do less of that now because we know that people's habits have changed. On the other hand, Breaking Bad, the phenomenon that became the popularity of Breaking Bad would not have happened without Netflix. After season 1, we were just hoping the show would get renewed. It was really touch and go, and I think only because Bryan Cranston got nominated for an Emmy that first year, it really gave us legs. And then we noticed a distinct increase in awareness about the show when the show started to appear on Netflix, which was after, I think, season 3. Before that, it was kind of the show you go to a party and say, oh yeah, I've heard of that show, or one of those things people like to talk about, or having knew they should have seen but hadn't seen, and then suddenly actually people had seen it.
right.
And it translated into the numbers on the live viewings of subsequent seasons. Really grew exponentially on AMC because more than anything else, the previous episodes were available on Netflix. So it's just an interesting mixture out there of all the formats and how they play off each other.
This is a question just for the panel in general, and jump in. Do you feel any added pressure now that you're kind of rolling into future seasons of your show? I mean, particularly obviously Stranger Things, and there's a lot of focus on you guys, and I know 13 Reasons Why has a season 2, etc. So anybody can jump in, but do you guys you feel pressure, or are you just kind of chill and relaxed while you think any other stuff pressure?
Enjoying the process, actually. It gives you a little more time to hash out some of the ideas, perform some of the little concepts you wrote from the first season. Hopefully place them more in the show.
Do you push yourself creatively? Like, do you guys write something and maybe season 1 you've been like, that's cool, but now that you're going to season 2, you're like, no, it's got to be better.
I think a lot of the
Different, or you mean?
yeah, different.
But different is probably a more accurate word.
I mean, it's not. It maybe feels different to us, but
Right.
to the general public, it might sound really similar to season 1. But there's just a lot of different types of cues in this coming season that are maybe less melodic and just a little bit more off.
Strange.
I can't say strange anymore. It's I'm sure we'll get that from every.
Anybody else want to jump in on that?
I'm not intimidated about the idea of making new stuff. Honestly, the only intimidation is just more 15-hour days that might be happening. But honestly, I feel like there's a good flow already happening, and I'm still relatively new to this, so speaking from experience, particularly on this show, on 13 Reasons Why, to have really awesome communication from the showrunner was a huge benefit on this. And I think I would be a lot more intimidated if there wasn't good communication about what was generally, what they were hoping for the show. That could be super intimidating. Because then sometimes you feel like you're in a boat in the middle of the ocean, you don't really know what type of direction, if you're not getting clear communication. So for this, I think it just feels exciting to do new stuff and less on the intimidating side of that.
I thought there'd be like 100 more people critiquing our music, like shutting it down. It's been had a good flow. So
That's great. I'm going to open up to questions from the audience in a second. I've got one more question. But so there's a microphone here in the middle. Please line up if you have a question. And for those of you who are able to ask a question, we have some cool soundtracks and swag and stuff. So come on up and see me when you're done asking a question. So my last question is, this is for everybody, please answer. What are some of your favorite shows right now, and what stand out to you musically? We'll start with Natalie.
Well, I have to say I'm a fan of Game of Thrones, and I also had the pleasure of playing on that show, so it was a lot of fun. I also really like Fargo, so and Breaking Bad, I really liked it.
I'm not watching tons of shows right now, but I have seen a good handful of Westworld, and I think it's pretty rad. I love how they integrate music into the show on that one. That's my answer.
I'm not watching that much TV. That's relevant to maybe.
You could be obscure reference or an old reference.
I mean, I just kind of watch what's on. Those people not on. And I kind of take notes on, I pay attention, but I guess the movies are more influential. I don't know. It's like renting class. Those are pretty complex opening theme. Or like SV, or like what's all that stuff? Like 40 instruments in there. You just hear stuff that you're moving about today, but it all kind of influences me. I'm not really super into it right now.
I'm watching this show called Twin Peaks. It's not really. I don't think anybody's ever heard of it. I think it might be something at some point. The music in that's pretty bizarre, actually. It's a lot different than I think a lot of contemporary scores in certain ways, and that it's very minimal in a very different way than you would hear on a lot, even in movies, which. I mean, it's a weird show, obviously. It's seeing it, but it's particularly bizarre this time around. And I've been enjoying that. I know there's probably mixed feelings about that because it's very much David Lynch going off on this thing. That's what I've been watching, and the score it's pretty unique in a lot of ways.
I'm sure that it'll find its audience.
Yeah, likewise, I don't have a whole lot of time to watch TV. Things are piling up on my DVR. I'm very curious about the Twin Peaks, but I haven't actually seen any of the newest incarnation of it. Most recently, I think I've tried to catch up on The Americans, which is a good show. Cool.
Nathan Barr, who scores Americans, by the way, is a great score. I saw, was anybody at the TV Academy concert? No, probably not. Anyways, at the TV Academy, they did a concert of TV music, and Nathan Barr brought in 4 musicians, and they played on a deconstructed piano. And it was this really cool performance on YouTube. So if you can find it on YouTube, I know it's on the Emmys website, but it was really cool. All right, so let's start with questions from the audience, and when you're done, just come up and see me.
Kyle, Michael, and Eskmo, were you attempting a career in composing for film and television prior to getting your shows? And also, for anyone on the panel, is it beneficial to be near the hub of entertainment, LA or Toronto, whatever, or is it sort of detrimental, as you were saying, about detaching from work?
I can answer. that out, which is extremely fortunate, but yeah, it kind of fell into place. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I definitely was interested in working on films. I hadn't really thought about TV, to be honest, and but just film in general, just doing something for a picture. And moving to LA was part of that. Moving to California, what brought me out to California was the Redwoods, and music was kind of just a part of that. LA particularly was thinking about film, that kind of stuff. I think it's important to be close. I've met so many people. It's not necessarily just film, TV, that world. I've just met a lot of creative people in LA, here, up there. And I think that's just helped to branch out into different worlds. But I don't really know. I imagine I would love to get to a certain point someday where I can be in a mountain in the woods with a really good internet connection. Be able to just work from there. But for myself, I think right now it's important.
Next, please.
Hi. I kind of asked this question in a film composition panel earlier this week, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. What can you, as composers who are already in the business, do to encourage racial and gender diversity among composers? Especially, I'd love to hear Matt Golubi's thoughts on this. It's great to see you open on the panel.
Well, I think it's sticking together and helping one another, and just being aware of the fact that there are more women composers than people think, actually, and just giving them the chance to pitch and just, opening the horizon to that is very important. Just having a chance to prove that they can also have a really nice point of view musically that can add to the community in the TV, film, whatever industry. So, and also as a composer, join groups, join support groups, hire musicians, female musicians, or colored musicians, whatever. I think it's just better for everybody to get a varied community, because if I look in the room, that's what I see. So there's no reason why what you hear shouldn't be presented.
Next.
First of all, thank you for adding your dimension to these great shows to make them greater. My question is, when you wind up having such a big hit, I'm assuming this is your first time, you get that golden ticket, do you have any fear that this is it, and that there's, it's going to be hard to top?
Fear, not really, because you can't do anything about it, but yeah, that's definitely a thought that I've had.
It's kind of like worrying you're going to die all the time or something. Nobody knows that. Survival instinct. You're just like, okay, I have to. This is happening. Just work as put everything into it you can. Try not to be great at it.
Go ahead.
Right. Hi. So my question is about what Dave was talking about earlier, deadlines and inspiration. So how do you manage with all the stress of the deadlines to deliver on time and get past writer blocks, I guess, and just keep it going and not still take care of yourselves, obviously, because it must be a really stressful situation.
I think just getting up out of the studio and just walking around for even 10 minutes at a time is absolutely critical. Because if you're just sitting in the same room, you're going to be in that room for most of your life. So you might as well get up and walk around. And usually, if you're feeling weird about something, step back from it and then come and look at it again. You can identify what wasn't working for you, hopefully, and then address that easier. I think taking breaks is very important. And if you're not able to accomplish what you really need to do at that time, just switch gears for a minute and then come back to it. I think for me that's helpful. That's helpful.
I actually had a trampoline in my basement. Yeah. Yeah, because, in my studio or whatever, just because, that show, I had like 800 minutes of music to do by myself in a year and a half, which is crazy, and I'm also a performer, so I had to juggle both of these and switch gears. So I took breaks and trained a lot, ate well, and had my trampolines at 3 a.m. sometimes when I was literally falling on my keyboard. I would just do 5 minutes of trampoline to keep going.
You gotta get a trampoline.
Yes.
Just to, right, you said the deadlines and stuff. I know from my personal experience, when I get into psychological head trip and spiral out into, dear God, what's going to happen type of mode, it always helps me to come back to one step at a time. And it really always helps me. If I think about the whole entire project, I faint, and I'd rather just take a nap than do anything, And so but the idea of just chiseling away like one thing at a time, and like you're saying, like if something's not flowing out, switch gears, come over here. I agree with Dave, like when I'm working on a particular show, I stick to that one that day. But if this scene's not working, then I'll go over here, But I think taking it at one bite at a time, little chunks, because next thing you know, you're already halfway through, and then you're already almost done, I think that's a huge thing to remember as you're going through it, for sure.
Yeah, and having a good cue sheet and a good list of what you need to work on is very helpful.
Color coded.
Yes.
This is for Kyle and Michael. With you're primarily got the analog synth-based sound, and a lot of the stuff they do with the show being real horror-oriented reminds me a little bit of the Goblin. And if you'd ever be open to branching out to like some progressive rock elements, or if you're just going to stick with the primary synth sound.
Well, Stranger Things probably won't go there, but it's not impossible. It is an influence.
Yeah, Goblin's great. I love Italian prog. It's like a big influence. And I think we incorporate a little bit of that in our music, but maybe not as much of the really proggy like time signature.
As a prog fan, I think we try to keep everything a little bit reserved, even like in our band when we write stuff. Might pull from that influence, but we don't go as far into it. Don't get as funky. Stuff like that. Audible.
So I've heard that John Williams just fiddles around on the piano and then takes it to Spielberg, like when he's starting out. How do you guys start your process and like develop those early themes?
Exactly like that. No, actually, I'm serious. The difference is that I don't go to Vince Gilligan with just a piano track and try to get him to understand my greater vision of what the whole score is going to sound like. I mean, I think part of that is just the expectation now that with the technology that's available, we're expected to deliver demos that are essentially done. I mean, maybe get tweaked, but that chasm now between an idea and the realization of that idea falls squarely upon us. And I think that there's only a few of the greatest of composers that can still do that. But the germ or the idea behind it, at least for me, is the same. In my small studio, I put everything around me and I make sure everything is on and everything is playable. And I'm a big pacer, so I'll literally walk around the room and blink on stuff until something somewhere creates some germ of something that I can print in Pro Tools and becomes an idea that I can build on.
Thank you.
When I approach Spielberg, I just tell him, hey, just sit down.
Hi, just wanted to say that I came all the way from Colombia to here, and I was really excited to see you guys there this particular day. So I'm a composing student, and I wanted to know, my teachers have told me that the best inspiration is a deadline, because like it sets you when you have to give your work. How do you guys know when the work is organic and it's not being mechanized? Like when, how do you manage to keep it, the creative process organic and not forced?
Well, I think some of your earliest best ideas are some of the best ideas when they're kind of raw, kind of at a demo phase. So deadlines, like they
think there's a pitfall to working with a lot of technology, which we all do. That I think you're talking about, where that all that technology, while it can help you in so many ways, can also be a hindrance towards something that's honest, musically, emotionally, organically, and I think that's honestly the craft of what we do in a nutshell. I mean, if you listen to what these guys are doing, is maybe very synth inspired in a lot of technology, but it's got an incredible amount of heart. And I think that's true of everyone who does what we do in a successful way, because music is not interesting, or it's not emotive unless it's able to translate those feelings and that honesty. And as long as you're starting from a place, I think, that feels honest as a creative person, and you'll find a way to not let those tools get in the way.
Hello, big fan of your shows. Breaking Bad's my favorite show of all time. A lot of that is the music, so thank you for all your work. My brother just started watching Stranger Things, and he told me, why didn't anyone tell me the music was this great? I would have started watching it months ago. And so for Kyle and Mike, are there any, because of the Hotline Miami games, we've really got into synthwave as a genre. And so are there any modern synthwave artists that either inspire you or you recommend listening to for people who like your music?
There's a band called Survive. They do a pretty good job. Simply think
I've stumped you, I'm sorry.
I don't know, like maybe some people kind of started pushing that genre, like Kaminsky, like that. So like, I don't know. I followed up with some of those artists, but try to do something different.
Aphex time. Go ahead.
Hi. So when you get your kind of pitch, so for example for Stranger Things, it's like an 80s sci-fi show that's binged on Netflix. You get that entire list, and in the beginning, it shows all the different elements. When you start creating your music, do you look at the different elements and then try to make them and then try to combine them, or do you just kind of look at it and then try to interact with all these different elements?
Well, I think in our case, the directors kind of came to us because they thought what we were already doing kind of fit. And so it wasn't really about, are we going to do the synth thing for this? It was like, they came to us because we're doing a synth thing, right? But they also said, don't make it too synthy.
Yeah,
It
it's a
took a while
very
to figure out.
popular synth score. That was like one of their main things. And one of their critiques from some of the early demos was, it's too synthy. We had to figure out what that meant. Because we're like, well, yeah, it's all synths.
But I think early on we would just try to pick some generic types of scenes that you could compose for before we had any actual picture to work with. And we were just like, this is kind of a tense type of moment that could work, you know. This is a, lighthearted.
Right. Coming up with your talent, just there's like, you really just have melody and tone. And sometimes one tone, doesn't matter relative what note it is, could have like be more emotional than some melody. It's not been described the right way. So, and then just combining these elements can be really simple. So like how the melodies kind of ups and tones.
Hi there. I'm a huge fan of all your work, and I happen to listen to the Stranger Things soundtrack on vinyl, being able to sit there and listen the entire time, and I was wondering if you had ever thought about like how your music would stand on its own, or do you tend to solely focus on more like what is needed for the scene, like the emotion of the scene, or the story that's involved, or do you ever think about like overall like how it could be stand on its own?
So, dealing with deadlines a lot, we didn't really get the luxury to, I mean, we say we worked on it for a really long time, which we did. And some of the earlier stuff was more fleshed out, like longer actual pieces of music that couldn't be as long on its own. But once you start getting into having to produce everything, then it's more, at least for me, it's mainly focused on the scenes.
It kind of explains why the record has like 88 songs or something. And they're all like 30 seconds to a minute. We would have loved each one to be a full piece of music. Maybe people do consider them a full piece of music in 30 seconds, but we didn't really expect to have to make a record. So, well, they told us they were like, we don't really do records. We don't want to do that. And then they went, we gave a record. So we tried to just make it flow as good as possible with all those things. I thought it was going to be a train wreck, but it seemed to like it.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic.
As a record, just a listening experience all the time.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for your time. I have two questions. First, I'm just curious if any of you could speak to a role that music education may have played in your past. And totally unrelated, is there anything you can speak to or any advice you have on trying to balance like children and family with your process? Thank
I'm a 17-year-old, so yes, I do have to balance that, and I'm in the process of moving here to LA, so it's also a big move, which means that there's a lot of family considerations. So in daily life, for me, it's trying to involve my son as much as I can. Like he's around here at the zoo probably right now, and just making this fun. I think I'm the cool mom because he's been to so many of my events, been on stage at so many of my shows, been on the TV, on live stuff. It's just getting him involved so that he feels he's a part of it, and that I'm not, when I'm working, I'm not actually just taking time away from being with him.
I do not have a kid yet. Someday soon enough. But I will say, I didn't have any training or school, but I will say that I remember my 8th grade teacher, maybe 7th grade, had played us John Cage, and I remember being so impacted by that. And I could say that totally impacted me. So if you are a music teacher, you are making a difference. Just want to let you know that.
Go ahead. This is our last question.
Thank you very much for your time. Recently became a studio session musician, and I was just wondering, as far as I'm aware, contractors handles all the hiring of the musicians. Is that true? And if not, is it considered bad form for a musician, say, to reach out with a demo to like composers if they have a way?
I don't think it's bad form at all, actually. I think it's smart. If you want to be a session musician, I mean, obviously contractors are your immediate way in, especially for large-scale recordings. But especially in TV, actually, the truth is most of us are not working, with big orchestras. Most of my shows, I'm dealing with soloists or small groups, and the players that I hire are people that I've worked with for years, and they're personal relationships, because you come like anyone else who works with us or works with us, music editors, orchestrators, any of those things. You have to build up that level of trust in people. So actually, I don't think it's, you don't want to be a jerk about it, but I think there's nothing wrong with reaching out to composers and letting them know that you're around and that you're a union member or not a union member or whatever it is, and what your specialty is.
I'm also a session musician, so I have also been a contractor for numerous projects. When that happens, it's normally more like on rules, AFM rules, whatever. But when composers ask me for specific stuff, like a soloist, then it's a one-on-one, they pick who they want, like a soloist, whatever instrument. But it's a different relationship normally than when they just hire a contractor for bigger stuff.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much for coming down to the